Today I'd like to talk about a band called Toad the Wet Sprocket. Toad the Wet Sprocket, like many bands that I play in my set lists and that I discuss and that I, collect music by, is a band that people don't really talk about a whole lot anymore. When it comes to the 90s, you've got your heavy hitters, you've got your Pearl Jams and your Soundgardens and your whatnots. You've got your sort of second tier. You've got your Three Doors Down, your Matchbox 20s, your whatevers. But then, so you have a whole slew of groups that were huge at the time that people don't really discuss very heavily anymore, and they're ones that I think that's tragic that people don't, because God, some of these bands were insanely good, and some of them didn't have the longest careers, but before they either stopped recording or before they broke up or whatever may have happened, some of the music that they made and the accomplishments that they had were very noteworthy. And I'm talking about bands like Candlebox or the Gin Blossoms, who I've talked about in a previous video, Seven Mary Three, or Dog's Eye View, Better Than Ezra, and Toad the Wet Sprocket. The thing that really sticks out to me about the first time I ever heard Toad the Wet Sprocket was 90s alternative was kind of angry. Maybe not angry. It was angsty at the time. I'm looking at you, Nirvana, who I love, but come on. You had a lot of sort of anger. I mean, Pearl Jam was, screaming about, mistreatment by mommy in songs like Alive, or the cry for help of the overlooked and, unheard student in Jeremy. But then, along came, and this was just before you started getting some of the happier pop alternative, along came this song called Walk on the Ocean. And it had this sort of acoustic bass to it, and this sort of this very melodic vocal, and the bass line would sort of climb this hill and then come back down, and it was very sweeping. And there was just something about the song that took me away every time I heard it. I ran out and I bought the cassette single because that was a thing back then. And Toad the Wet Sprocket's Walk on the Ocean was a song that made a huge impact on me. When I started playing gigs, in front of people like semi-regularly, I'm talking like 10, 15 years ago, when I started doing festivals and things, that was a song. Walk on the Ocean was one that from the beginning, I would do that one if I was up in front of people.
We spotted the ocean, the head of the trail.
You could see people's faces light up as they remembered it. It was one that even that far back, you just didn't really hear that much anymore. And that band went on to have, several more hit singles. They had All I Want. They had Fall Down, which I do in some of my set lists. God, there was one from a soundtrack that I can't remember the name of anymore. And at least before COVID, because what have any bands been doing really in the last year? But as of before the pandemic, these guys were still out touring, I think with the original lineup, and bringing their music to audiences who really are receptive to them and remember and love what they do. And they're just one of those bands that I can put on. This is the Fear album. This is the one that Walk on the Ocean came from. There's also Dulcinea. That's the one with Fall Down. And I believe this is their debut album, Bread and Circus. It's a slightly different kind of feel and take on Toad the Wet Sprocket than these other two. But anytime I see an album by these guys that I don't have, I typically will pick it up and give it a listen, because it's something that I know I'm going to appreciate. I know I'm going to kind of like the music that I hear there. I know even if it's unfamiliar, it's going to kind of take me on a journey. Some bands might get into a rut, and you hear this all the time with groups like AC/DC. They say, oh, you buy an album, you know what you're getting. It's the same album every time, blah, blah, blah. I think that's kind of a tired thing that people say about some of these groups. For instance, I don't necessarily think that applies to AC/DC, but I see where people are coming from with it. I don't think that applies in any way to Toad the Wet Sprocket. I believe these guys take you to fresh and new places every time, and it's always somewhere that you appreciate the journey and you appreciate the perspective while you're along for the ride, because it's something that you won't get from other bands, and it's something that you won't get from other albums that you already have by this band. So, I know I've talked about Walk on the Ocean, and you probably thought I was setting you up to show you that particular song. But I think what I'll do instead is swerve you a bit, and I think I'll show you Fall Down, because that's a song that I really, really love by these guys. It's from the Dulcinea album. It's one that people remember less today, I think, than ones like Walk on the Ocean or All I Want. And it's just one that I, always, every time I hear it, it gets me moving. It kind of gets gets my energy up. It's a song that has never lost the ability to kind of do that. It still retains that magic from the first time that I heard it back in the early 90s. I really appreciate the song. I hope you will too. So this is me doing Fall Down by Toad the Wet Sprocket. I hope you'll enjoy it.
She said, I'm fine, okay, cover up your trembling hands. It's indecision when you know you ain't got nothing left. When the good times never stay and the cheap thrills always seem to fade away. When will we fall? When will we fall down? Well, jump back, gotta get out of here. Been too long this time, and jump back, gotta get out of here. When will we fall down? She hates her life, she hates her skin, she even hates her friends. Tries to hold on to all the reputations she can't mend. And there's some chance we could fail, but the last time someone's always there for bail. When will we fall? When will we fall down? Well, jump back, gotta get out of here. Been too long this time, and jump back, gotta get out of here. When will we fall down? When will we fall? She said, I'm fine, okay, cover up your trembling hands. There's indecision when you know you ain't got nothing left. For the last time, conscience calls for a good friend. I was never there at all. When will we fall? When will we fall down? Well, jump back, gotta get out of here. Been too long this time, and jump back, gotta get out of here. When will we fall? Jump back,